After winning a 200 million lottery, my boyfriend secretly gave the ticket to the now bankrupted girl of our school. He tried to reason with me, saying we still have the SATs. She has nothing left. High on her new wealth, the it girl went joyriding and killed me in a car crash. In court, my boyfriend forged a suicide note, and she was acquitted. Then I opened my eyes. I was back, and my boyfriend was agonizing over the it girl's family going bankrupt. I hid the lottery ticket and gave him an idea. You don't have the money to save her, but you still have your grades. The next day, my boyfriend, who had the grades for Harvard, applied to a community college to get a $1 million enrollment bonus for her. The most popular girl in school was broke, and my boyfriend was taking it the hardest. He was so worried he broke out in stress sores all over his lips, but he lied and said it was from studying all night. Vivi, you said you thought you might win the lottery. Did you? My boyfriend Leo looked at me, his face full of hope. I shook my head, feigning disappointment. Leo's face fell, and his eyes filled with frustration. He quickly packed his bag and rushed off. I'm going to the library to study. I won't walk you home. Once Leo was out of sight, I finally looked at the lottery ticket I'd been clutching in my hand. I had lied to him. I won 200 million. In my past life, I immediately shared the news with Leo. He turned right around and gave the ticket to the it girl, Jessica, whose family had just gone bankrupt. We still have the SATs to fall back on, he'd pleaded. She has nothing. I'm the class president. It's my duty to help a classmate in need. What a joke. He wanted to help a classmate in need by stealing my money. After losing the lottery ticket in my past life, my only hope was to pour everything into the SATs. But the day before the exam, Jessica, giddy with her new fortune, hit and killed me while recklessly joyriding. After I died, Jessica cried her crocodile tears. Leo, heartbroken for her, stayed up all night forging a suicide note in my handwriting and testified that I had killed myself. With a witness and physical evidence, Jessica was acquitted and released on the spot. To thank him, Jessica confessed her feelings for Leo. With his help, she even secured an early admission spot at Tsinghua University. They went to college together and became the campus's golden couple. I was just the sacrifice they left behind, forgotten by everyone. The painful memories flooded back, and I clenched the lottery ticket tighter. This time, I'm not just keeping the money and acing my exams. I'm going to make them both pay in blood. I cashed the ticket immediately. After paying 40 million in taxes, I was left with 160 million. Seeing that long string of zeros in my bank account, a wave of relief washed over me. Even my steps felt lighter as I walked back to school. I didn't expect to see Jessica crying by the lotus pond as soon as I got back to campus, surrounded by a crowd of her sycophantic admirers. And among them, of course, was my boyfriend Leo, who had lied about going to the library. Leo didn't stand out in the crowd of suck-ups. While others pushed their way to the front to comfort Jessica, he was shoved to the side, staring at her with a look of helpless heartache. When Jessica's gaze swept past him, it was filled with utter disdain. I suddenly remembered. In my past life, the first time Jessica ever gave Leo the time of day was after he stole my 200 million for her. That's when the nobody Leo was promoted to her #1 simp. But in this life, Leo was just as poor as me. To a pampered rich girl like her, he was just a broke kid with good grades, not worth a second thought. Seeing the agony on Leo's face, the desperation of wanting someone he couldn't have, I remembered the look of bliss on his face in my past life after he'd given her the ticket. I love her. As long as she's happy, I'd go to hell and back. Back then, Leo and I were neighbors and desk mates, always together. Everyone already saw us as a couple. Even I thought we were just like any other couple, just one step shy of making it official. But one day, during an argument, he looked at me with a sneer. Vivi, what makes you think I like you? Being with you is so boring. A lot of the time, I just wished you were her. But then I'd realize that's impossible. She's so bright and full of life, like a little sun. You're nothing like her with your dull personality. I'd do anything just to get one step closer to her. His words became a self-fulfilling prophecy. For Jessica, he stole a fortune, covered up a murder, and schemed to get her into a top university with him. He became the hero of his own love story and destroyed my life in the process. He wasn't a murderer, but he might as well have been. I watched him coldly. In my last life, he sacrificed me to become a martyr for love. This life, I'm going to make him sacrifice himself to light that same fire. After her family went bankrupt, Jessica was in a financial crisis. Not having enough money to spend, she looked haggard. Leo saw it and his heart ached for her. Consumed by guilt for not being able to help, he couldn't even focus in class. He was either spacing out or frantically searching his phone for ways to make quick cash. I was the complete opposite. I threw myself into studying like a woman possessed. Before winning the lottery, my financial situation was even worse than Jessica's. I had to juggle studying with part-time jobs just to afford my living expenses. But now that I had the money, I was finally free from financial worries and could dedicate all my time to my schoolwork. Leo was always ranked first in our grade, and I was the perennial number 2. Everyone thought I just wasn't as smart as him, but only I knew the truth. If my part-time jobs hadn't taken up so much of my time, his top spot would have been mine. And now, I was going to take it back. Just as Leo was stressing about money, an opportunity arose. The school's student aid program was suddenly relaunched, and the grant was significant, a full $10,000. There was only one spot in our class, but 3 people were running for it. Me, Leo, and the now broke Jessica. Jessica's face screamed confidence. When our homeroom teacher announced the news, Leo looked excitedly at Jessica and eagerly said, "Jessica, I don't want the spot. You can have the money." A brilliant smile spread across Jessica's face. Leo stared, captivated, his eyes filled with an even deeper adoration. I looked up from a huge stack of practice tests and scoffed. "I haven't dropped out of the running yet. What makes you think it's hers for the taking?" Leo shot me a look of disapproval and condemnation. I just smirked. In the past, this grant always came down to a choice between me and Leo, and every time, I chose to let him have it. I let him win. It wasn't that I couldn't beat him. Sure, his grades were good, but he was arrogant and selfish, not nearly as close with our classmates as I was. In a vote, he'd never win against me. Jessica couldn't win against me either. Before she went broke, she acted high and mighty, never bothering to hang out with us regular students. After she lost her money, besides her circle of simps, hardly anyone felt sorry for her. Unless I backed out, the grant was mine. They both knew it. Jessica forced out a few tears, but her tone was sharp and biting. "Vivi, my family is bankrupt. Can't you just let me have it? Don't be so selfish." See? That was Jessica for you. Always playing the victim to guilt-trip others. It was the same in my past life. She was the one who hit and killed me with her car, but in court, she looked at me with such hatred. It's all her fault. If she hadn't been wandering around on the road in the middle of the night, I wouldn't have gotten scared and lost control of the car. She brought it on herself. She deserved to die. My expression turned cold. Just as I was about to speak, a clear, lazy voice cut in. "That's some serious guilt tripping. Everyone's got problems. Why should she just give it to you?" I followed the voice and was stunned to see it was Ryan, the school's notorious heartthrob and bad boy. His dad was supposedly a jewelry tycoon. Jessica had transferred to our school specifically to try and get with him. Too bad for her. She'd been his deskmate for half a year, and he'd barely given her the time of day. But now he was speaking up for me, publicly shaming Jessica. Jessica's face went from white to red, her expression twisting in fury. She glared at me, her eyes practically shooting flames of jealousy. Once Ryan spoke up, everyone else snapped out of it, looking at Jessica with disapproval, and making it clear they wouldn't vote for her. For the first time, Jessica turned to Leo for help. Leo immediately looked at me, frowning. "Vivi, I need to talk to you." He pulled me aside, his voice a careful, coaxing whisper. "Vivi, can you please give the spot to Jessica? It's really important to me. You'll help me, right?" His face was etched with anxiety. Not far away, Jessica's eyes were glued to Leo, waiting for the outcome. We both knew this was a test. If Leo could convince me to give up, his status in Jessica's eyes would skyrocket. She would start to accept him. If not, he would be nothing but a loser to her, and she would never look to him for anything again. His secret crush on Jessica would end today. Leo was terrified of that outcome. Watching him, so nervous he was swallowing hard, I had to fight back a crazed laugh. I never thought spending a little money could lead to such a ridiculous spectacle. It was a pleasant surprise. Hilarious. Why would I ever fight with Jessica over the grant? I was the one secretly funding it. I had received financial aid from the school for years. Now that I'd won the lottery, it was only right to give something back. Besides, my ultimate goal was to make Jessica value and fall for Leo. If she didn't see his worth, she wouldn't latch onto him like a leech, and he'd just spend his life pining after her from afar. But once she realized how useful he could be, she'd cling to him like a vengeful spirit, ready to skin him alive and suck him dry. I was going to destroy Leo, but he wasn't worth getting my own hands dirty. Being destroyed by his dream girl. That was the only way to make him suffer for the rest of his life. I agreed to give up the spot. Leo rushed over to Jessica to take the credit, and for the first time, she smiled at him, her eyes curving into crescents. She threw her arms around his neck, blinking her eyes and cooing, "Leo, you're amazing." The praise from his dream girl made Leo blush, his hands fumbling awkwardly. I sat back down at my desk. Ryan strode over, leaning his hands on my desk. "And here I thought you'd come to your senses," he said playfully. "Still a love-struck fool, I see." I ignored him, fiddling with my papers. Ryan pulled up a chair and sat next to me, suggesting with a grin, "Look, Leo's obviously not into you, so being a hopeless romantic for him is pointless. You should try being one for me instead. I happen to be single." I lowered my eyes. Just then, Leo, still giddy from Jessica's praise, finally came back, only to be told by Ryan that they were switching seats. "You take my spot. You'll be closer to Jessica." Leo hesitated, looking at me. We had been desk mates since the start of the school year. He pretended to ask for my opinion, but his eyes were already drifting toward Jessica. I nodded in agreement. It was perfect. Once they were desk mates, I wouldn't even have to lift a finger. Jessica would discover for herself what a useful tool Leo could be. After the seat swap, Jessica shot me a venomous look, her eyes filled with resentment. Things went exactly as I predicted. As soon as she and Leo became desk mates, Jessica started ordering him around like he was her personal assistant. She loved snacks, so she'd have Leo run errands for her every day. Even during class, if she craved something specific, Leo would skip class to go buy it for her. She loved to party and would convince Leo to sneak out with her every day, hopping the school wall to go to internet cafes and all sorts of shady places. She'd sway her hips in the neon lights and pass him a puff of her cigarette between kisses. Under Jessica's influence, Leo quickly transformed from a model student everyone praised into a delinquent everyone on campus avoided. When he reappeared after a 2-day absence, the top 2 buttons of his school uniform were undone, revealing a tattoo of Jessica's name on his collarbone. Our homeroom teacher, who had high hopes for him, blew up on the spot, yelling at him for being so foolish. Leo didn't even bother to lift his eyelids, slumping lazily against the doorframe, looking like he was about to pass out. He wasn't just trying to look cool, he was genuinely exhausted. Partying costs money. Jessica was broke, of course, so Leo was constantly working part-time jobs to fund her expensive lifestyle. The teacher finally gave up, waving a dismissive hand for him to go back to his seat. Jessica gave Leo a sweet smile and praised him for how cool he looked when he was defying the teacher. Leo, gratified by the praise, managed a tired but satisfied smile. Our teacher then announced that I had won the gold medal in the physics competition. The classroom erupted in cheers. Everyone knew the physics competition was the hardest, but it also carried the most weight. A gold medal was basically a golden ticket. Top universities would be fighting to recruit you early. It was a guaranteed ride. Our teacher looked at me with pride. "You can start thinking about which university you want to go to," she said, smiling. "With this, you can have your pick of Harvard or Yale." The classroom filled with more congratulations. The noise woke Leo up. He dug a finger in his ear, annoyed. "It's just early admission. What's the big deal? I can get into Harvard or Yale on my own with my SAT scores." The chatter in the room died down. No one doubted his ability. He had always been at the top of our class. Even with his recent decline, his 3 years of solid foundation meant he wouldn't fall too far behind. He then publicly wrapped an arm around Jessica and announced proudly, "Jessica, you pick the school, and I'll go wherever you go." Jessica beamed. A small smile played on my lips, but there was no warmth in my eyes. Pick any school you want. No, I'm going to make sure you have no school to go to in this life. After class, to celebrate my early admission, Ryan suddenly offered to take me out to dinner. I laughed. I got the scholarship. Why are you the one treating me to dinner? I teased. Ryan glanced at me and answered frankly, I'm happier than you are about it. Who wouldn't be happy to see someone they like have a bright future? He looked at me again, then added mysteriously, dress up. There might be a surprise. I smiled and nodded. Ryan affectionately ruffled my hair before turning to leave. The moment he was out of sight, the smile on my face froze, and my fingers dug into my palms until my knuckles turned white. No one knew that Ryan was a complete and utter monster. He enjoyed inflicting pain. On cats, on dogs, and on any girl he set his sights on. In my past life, on the night Jessica ran me over, I was escaping from the prison he had meticulously crafted for me. It was the third night of his abuse. I had watched him torture over a dozen cats to death with my own eyes. Ryan had tilted my chin up, a wild smile on his face. You're the first person I've really wanted. Too bad you were always trailing after Leo. It was hard to make a move. Perhaps because the hunt had been so long, he was even more vicious when he finally had me. He loved hearing my breathless whimpers, like a dying kitten. He loved the fear in my eyes, both in and out of bed. Those agonizing memories came rushing back, until I heard Jessica's sharp, jealous voice from behind me. How did you seduce him? You act like you're all about studying, but who knows what kind of man-stealing tricks you're learning on the side. I turned around to see Jessica's face twisted with envy. My plan to finally take down Ryan depended entirely on her. I put on a smug expression, leaned in close, and whispered something in her ear. Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. Abusing cats is immoral, not illegal. Who's going to stop me? I said softly, make this as big as possible. I want him put away for good. The reporter solemnly promised to do everything in his power. Abusing cats might not be a crime, but abusing people is. The reporter was a pro. That night, the news that Ryan was a sadist spread like wildfire. He's the campus heartthrob on the outside, but a twisted abuser behind closed doors. It's disgusting. I heard they found specimens of mutilated cat parts in his house. He's a total psycho. When they carried Jessica out last night, she was crying so hard. They said she had several broken ribs. Don't feel too bad for her. She was the one throwing herself at Ryan. She got what she deserved. Exactly. You play with fire, you get burned. Besides, she's not that pitiful. She's still got her loyal backup boyfriend. I really don't get why Leo is still with her. It's just pathetic. I glanced at Leo's empty seat and gave a sarcastic laugh. Leave her? The more Jessica needed him, the less likely Leo was to leave. True love is proven in times of trouble. That was a belief Leo clung to. Just like in my past life, when Jessica killed me and was facing prison, Leo's first instinct was to protect her. She needed him, and he had to be there to weather the storm with her and prove their love. Right now, he was probably at the hospital with her, stressing about her medical bills. Ryan was vicious. Jessica's injuries had to be serious. Since Jessica was the reason Ryan was in jail, the jewelry tycoon wasn't about to pay her medical bills. He probably wished she'd just die in the hospital. At this moment, Leo was all she had. Jessica would cling to him like a drowning person pulling their rescuer down into the abyss, never to surface again. After a week of skipping school, Leo finally came back. The first thing he did was find me and ask me to help him get a bank loan for Jessica's medical bills. Vivi, we grew up together. Can you please help me get a $1 million loan? Leo looked at me with pleading eyes, his expression almost affectionate. Just $1 million. I'll pay you back in the future. You're the only one who can help me. His voice was mournful and sad, but his words were utterly disgusting. The nerve of him trying to saddle me with $1 million in debt with just a few words. All because his dream girl needed money. From my last life to this one, he was always the same selfish bastard. But luckily, I was prepared. I sighed and said, Leo, I already asked the bank. They said they won't give me a loan because I have no assets. But your family's house is in your name. You could get the loan. Leo's eyes instantly darted away. I sneered inwardly. He wouldn't dare use his house as collateral. His mother, Sharon, guarded that house like it was her own eyeball. If she found out, she would probably beat Jessica to death. Besides, that house was the only thing Leo owned. He couldn't bear to part with it. He might be devoted, but he loved himself more. I slowly pulled out a recruitment flyer for a community college. I offered him an idea. This school gives a $1 million bonus to top students who enroll. Leo's eyes were glued to the flyer, tempted but hesitant. I pretended to be understanding. Never mind. Trading your future for love is something that only happens in novels. We're ordinary people. Our love isn't that grand. The moment the words left my mouth, Leo snatched the flyer from my hand and scoffed. You underestimate my love for Jessica. What's my future compared to her? I'd do anything to be with her. Besides, what are the SATs? I can make it big even without college. After he said his piece, Leo turned and left. A smile slowly spread across my face. I knew him too well. He wasn't even truly in love with Jessica. He was in love with the idea of sacrificing himself for love, the satisfaction it gave him. So with a little prodding from me, he chose love without a second thought. He looked down on the boring grind of studying and exams, which is why he was drawn to the wild, anti-school-it girl. But he would soon learn just how powerless a life without a proper education could be. The next day, Leo announced that after graduation, he would be attending the community college from the flyer. Our homeroom teacher nearly fainted from anger, calling him an idiot. Several teachers took turns trying to talk sense into him, urging him to think about his future. Leo, don't be impulsive. The school can figure something out for the medical bills. Don't throw away your future. Exactly, the SATs. You've studied for 12 years for this, to get into a good school and change your life. How can you give it up so easily? Think bigger. If you get into Harvard, you'll get tons of scholarship money, more than enough for her bills. Jessica can just tough it out for a while. The teachers all chimed in, earnestly trying to advise him, but Leo was getting more and more impatient. At this point, the more people tried to persuade him, the more determined he became to trade his future for love, just so he could feel like a hero in his own romantic tragedy. Leo had just brought Jessica back from the hospital. She was clinging to him, pale and weak. Leo was the only lifeline she could grasp now, and she couldn't let him give up on her. She shot a hateful glare at the teachers and said in a passive-aggressive tone, Leo, honey, you should listen to the teachers and give up on me. If you choose that college, they'll lose their year-end bonuses. A look of disgust crossed Leo's face. I've had enough of this. He roared. You're all so selfish, only thinking about yourselves and not about how I feel. I love Jessica, and I'm willing to sacrifice my future for her. Compared to her, the SATs are worthless. Leo screamed at the teachers, venting his frustration. They looked at him like he was a stranger. Our homeroom teacher's eyes were ice cold, filled with utter disappointment. I stepped forward and gently supported her. Ma'am, I whispered, don't bother. You can't talk sense into a love-struck fool. She gripped my hand tightly, her eyes welling with tears. Vivi, she said, her voice filled with sorrow. You stay clear-headed. Don't be like him. I nodded solemnly. She patted my head, relieved, and then told the other teachers to leave. She wasn't going to stop Leo anymore. Jessica flashed a triumphant smile. Finally, we're in the clear, she muttered. But in the next second, a cold laugh came from the doorway. You may have gotten past the teachers, but you're not getting past me. Mom, Leo cried out in panic. Sharon strode over to me, took my hand, and said with a pained expression, Vivi, I'm sorry I'm late. Don't you worry, you're the only daughter-in-law for me. Your mom and I are best friends. I care about you just as much as she does. I will absolutely not let anyone bully you. Jessica's victorious smile collapsed. She never thought that after getting past the teachers, there would be another obstacle. She was even more shocked to see that the moment Sharon appeared, Leo's resolve wavered. A few words from his mother, and he was filled with guilt, suddenly unable to bring up the topic of not going to Harvard. After dealing with Leo, Sharon turned to me gently. Your mom really misses you. Let's go home together. I nodded, but said I'd head back later. After they left, I walked over to a fuming Jessica and said softly, dealing with his mom is easy. She has one weakness. She's greedy. Jessica frowned. Why are you helping me? I guess I was moved by Leo's deep love for you, I said with a smile. Jessica lifted her chin smugly. You can only be jealous. Leo doesn't like you. There's no point in forcing it. I laughed to myself. Jealous? Me? And the one trying to force me and Leo together was his own mother. My mom and his mom, Sharon, were neighbors and best friends. Sharon wanted me to be Leo's girlfriend because I was the best girl he could get in his social circle. Sharon was a master actress. She had my mom completely convinced of her loyalty, but she was always stabbing her in the back. In my past life, after I died, my mom refused to believe I'd committed suicide and insisted on investigating. Sharon, using my mom's trust, tricked her into thinking she had found evidence, lured her to a cliff, and pushed her off. This time, I was going to rip off Sharon's mask right in front of my mom, and I was going to send Leo spiraling into the abyss for good. Jessica was racking her brain, trying to figure out how to get Sharon to accept her son going to a community college. Just when she was at a loss, a piece of news broke. Someone at school had won the 200 million lottery. The explosive news spread like wildfire through the school, and everyone was talking about it. It was the middle of a long break between classes. Jessica, nestled in Leo's arms, was groaning in pain from her injuries. Someone at our school won 200 million. So lucky. I wonder who it is. If it were me, I'd be smiling in my sleep. Jessica stopped moaning and her eyes lit up. Just then, Sharon stormed in with my mom, pointing at Jessica and screeching, "You're shameless. Still clinging to my son? I told you Leo is Vivi's boyfriend. Vivi's mom is right here. If you dare keep bothering Leo, she won't let you off easy." I sneered. She was using my mom to get rid of Jessica again. My mom came to my side, her face full of worry. She knew I'd had a crush on Leo since we were kids. "Vivi, don't be scared. Your Aunt Sharon has always doted on you. She'll definitely help you." Sharon chimed in with agreement. The next second, Jessica stood up straight. "You know who won the 200 million? I'll tell you. It was me." The entire room fell silent in shock. Sharon was stunned, looking skeptical and contemptuous. "You're lying. If you really won the lottery, why would you need my son to trade his future for money for you?" Jessica scoffed. "I was just testing your son, to see if he was willing to give up his future for me. If he was, I was going to split the 200 million with him." At the mention of splitting 200 million, Sharon's eyes practically bulged with greed. Jessica continued disdainfully, "But he has a stupid mother who forced my hand. So now, I'll do as you wish. Let your son go to Harvard. He won't see a single penny of this 200 million. She squeezed out a few tears and cried to Leo, "Leo, honey, I wanted to go to the same school as you. I'm sorry, I was being selfish and holding you back." Leo immediately shook his head, moved. "So that's why you wanted to go to the same university. Don't worry, I'm going to that community college. We'll go to the same school." Jessica's tears flowed harder. She looked at Sharon, sobbing, "But your mom won't allow it. We can't be happy without her blessing. I'm sorry, let's break up. Harvard or 200 million. Sharon made her choice in an instant. She grinned. "I approve. Of course I approve. I brought Vivi's mom here today to make her face reality. Her daughter can't compare to you." My mom looked at Sharon in disbelief, betrayed. Sharon spoke to my mom impatiently, "You see? This girl has 200 million. Vivi can barely scrape together her tuition. How can she compare? Get her away from my son." My mom was shaking with anger. I calmed her down and said coolly, "Since you look down on us so much, you can move out of our house." Both our families owned an apartment. To collect rent from her own place, Sharon had taken advantage of my mom's kindness and moved into our home, living comfortably off the rental income. Sharon scoffed, "Fine, we'll move. My daughter-in-law has 200 million. What's one apartment?" She then went back to sweet-talking Jessica. After much persuading from Sharon, Jessica reluctantly agreed to stay with Leo. That day, Leo signed the agreement to attend the community college and received the $1 million. If he broke the contract and didn't attend, or if his grades didn't meet the Harvard admission threshold, he would face a $10 million penalty. After getting the money, Jessica and Leo embraced tightly. Our homeroom teacher had completely given up on him and coldly told them to leave. They shot the teacher a disdainful look, then walked out hand in hand, parading their victory around the campus. With the $1 million, Jessica not only paid off her medical bills, but also had a tidy sum left over. She used the money to return to her former lavish lifestyle, spending her days and nights at various clubs. After signing the community college agreement, Leo became a school celebrity, hailed by everyone as a champion of true love. He happily accepted the title, his campus romance with Jessica becoming even more high profile as he basked in the satisfaction of having won her love. The feeling of protecting his dream girl on his own, and finally being with her brought him immense happiness. This blissful feeling lasted until the joint exams in the second semester of senior year. Leo plummeted from first in the class to 10th, while I became the new number 1. This joint exam was a mock version of the real SATs, meaning the results were a very strong indicator of our final scores. Leo's score was terrible, falling below the previous year's admission cutoff for Harvard. As soon as the scores were released, the community college he'd signed with sent him a formal warning. If his final exam scores were lower than Harvard's requirements, he would have to pay a $10 million penalty. For the first time, Leo panicked. He didn't want to be saddled with $10 million in debt before his life had even begun. Leo started trying to refocus on his studies, but when he tried to get back into the academic groove, he found that he had been completely left behind. The class had extra lessons on the weekend. Why didn't anyone tell me? Leo stormed into the teacher's office, angrily questioning our homeroom teacher. Ever since he signed the agreement, our teacher had given up on him. He was ignored for all class tutoring sessions and activities. Faced with Leo's accusation, the teacher let out a derisive laugh, her voice trembling with cold anger. The school doesn't waste resources on community college students. Leo's face turned ugly, but he couldn't say a word in rebuttal. I'm naturally talented. I don't need extra classes. I can catch up just by attending regular classes. Leo gave up his habit of skipping class and started attending every single one. But after less than a week, he was on the verge of a breakdown. He just couldn't fit into the class's study atmosphere. Everyone in the class was fighting for their future, nervously anticipating what kind of university they would get into. But not him. No matter how high he scored, he was destined for a community college. His classmates avoided him, and the teachers ignored his questions. He was treated like thin air. He had lost the common ground he shared with them, like a drab gray duckling in a flock of swans. When he first announced his decision, everyone had praised him as a champion of love. Now he was a laughingstock. Leo grew more irritable by the day. When Jessica, having spent all her money, sauntered back into the classroom, Leo desperately pleaded, "Jessica, can you pay the penalty for me? We can go to Harvard together, okay?" Leo had always thought it didn't matter which school he went to, as long as he was with Jessica. But now he realized it mattered a great deal. Jessica was taken aback. "It's no use paying the penalty," she said evasively. "My grades aren't good enough for Harvard." Leo eagerly offered to tutor her. Jessica scoffed. "You might want to teach, but I don't want to learn. If you can get me into Harvard without me having to study, then I'll pay the penalty for you." She thought this excuse would be enough to placate him, but she didn't see the glint in his eyes. After class, Leo came to my desk. He gave me a gentle smile, just like old times. "Vivi," he said wistfully, "congratulations on being number 1. It feels like we haven't talked in a long time." Then he asked casually, "For your early admission, which school did you choose?" I tightened my grip on my pen, a cold smile forming on my lips. Of course. Leo was once again plotting to use me for his own twisted ends. In my last life, he swapped my early admission spot and gave it to Jessica. It was finally time to settle that score. Harvard. I chose Harvard. Hearing my answer, a greedy look flashed across Leo's face. He licked his lips and asked, "That's a great school. Vivi, your early acceptance letter. Can I take a look at it?" The acceptance letter was a formal agreement sent by top universities to exceptional students. If you chose that school, you just had to sign it and send it back, and they would mail you an official offer of admission. Leo was skilled at forgery. He could memorize the information on the letter and create an identical one, then swap out the photo and personal details. Once those details were changed, the person accepted early by Harvard would quietly become Jessica. That's how he had stolen my admission spot for Jessica after I died in my past life. I smiled sweetly. Of course you can. I handed him the acceptance letter and watched as he eagerly memorized the details, a triumphant smile on his face. After he had memorized everything, he tossed the letter back at me and said congratulations in a pitying tone. He swaggered back to his seat and leaned over to whisper in Jessica's ear, telling her about his plan to get her into Harvard in my place. Jessica let out a sharp squeal of excitement. Leo, baby, is that for real? You're incredible. Leo tilted his chin up, his face full of pride. Of course. Just wait, we'll be going to Harvard together. Jessica hugged him excitedly. She might not like studying, but she loved the idea of going to a prestigious university. Once the official letter comes, you'll pay the penalty for me, right? And we'll go to Harvard together. Jessica's eyes darted away as she nodded guiltily. At this critical moment, she certainly wasn't going to tell him she hadn't actually won the lottery. Leo didn't notice her evasion. He hummed a happy tune as he flipped open a book. I watched him lazily, my shoulders shaking with laughter. Did he really think I was as stupid as I was in my last life, ready to walk right into his trap? Leo, I've already dug a grave for you. Enjoy this final moment of happiness before you sink into darkness forever. Leo forged Jessica's admission information and secretly swapped it with mine. The moment I mailed the letter, Leo and Jessica couldn't stop smiling. A classmate congratulated me on my acceptance, saying I had a bright future ahead. Jessica couldn't help but laugh out loud. Don't get too excited, she said meaningfully. You never know who will be the one getting in. Another classmate shot back. Whoever it is, it won't be you, the girl ranked last in our grade. Yeah, go be lovey-dovey with Leo. What do the SATs have to do with you two community college lovebirds anyway? If you can't be happy for her, then just shut up. The volley of comments from the class made Jessica's face twist in anger. Unable to take it anymore, she declared arrogantly, I'm telling you, the one going to Harvard will be me. Since the agreement was already mailed, Jessica dropped all pretense, telling everyone she met that she had secured early admission to Harvard and would be receiving her acceptance letter soon. No one believed her, but she was so confident and certain that many classmates came to warn me to be careful about having my spot stolen. It had happened before, but the penalties were so severe, expulsion at best, criminal charges at worst, that no one dared to do it anymore. But no one could guarantee that Jessica wouldn't be crazy enough to try forging documents. I just smiled, saying nothing. I already had a plan. On the day the acceptance letters arrived, Jessica and Leo were in the classroom bright and early. Our homeroom teacher walked in, holding the letters. Jessica's eyes were glued to them, as if trying to burn a hole through the envelopes. Leo gently took her hand and told her not to worry, that her name would definitely be on the letter. The teacher held up not one, but two acceptance letters. Her gaze sliced through Jessica and Leo like a knife. I have two early admission letters here, she said coldly. One is for Jessica for Harvard. Jessica let out a joyful scream. Only Leo looked uneasy. In the next second, the teacher continued. The second one is for Vivi, for Peking University. Leo's face went white, completely drained of color, while Jessica was still cheering for herself. The teacher sneered and said sternly, Harvard said that Vivi had already declined their offer, and they have it on record. However, someone used Vivi's personal information to impersonate her, which is a serious offense. They hope our school will handle it accordingly. Jessica finally realized something was wrong. She frowned and demanded of Leo, what's going on? You said it was foolproof. Leo turned to me, his eyes filled with hatred. Vivi, he snarled, you set me up. I smiled. I just played along with your plan. Leo's plan was perfect, but it hinged on the bet that Harvard had no prior information on me. All he had to do was overwrite my details with Jessica's, and she would be the one admitted. That's why he had asked me which school I chose. But he didn't know that I had been setting a trap for him from the very beginning. I didn't choose Harvard. I chose Peking University. Everything else was just a smokescreen. The teacher's voice was like a judge's sentence. Leo, Jessica, for your fraudulent actions, the school has made a decision. All eyes turned to the teacher in an instant. You are both expelled and disqualified from taking the SATs. After the announcement, Leo's face was stiff and pale. Jessica, however, instantly started making a scene. Why am I being punished? Leo did this. I had nothing to do with it. If anyone should be punished, it's him. Leo looked at Jessica in disbelief. He couldn't believe that the woman he loved would throw him under the bus at a time like this. Jessica refused to accept the outcome, angrily demanding that Leo admit it was all his doing and had nothing to do with her. The teacher's eyes were filled with scorn. I looked up and voiced the teacher's thoughts. Leo, how does love taste? Leo's face was a mask of humiliation. In the end, Leo took all the blame and prepared to pack his things and leave the school. But he had no idea things weren't that simple. As soon as the school's decision was announced, the dean from the community college that had given him the $1 million showed up, demanding he pay back $10 million in breach of contract fees. The dean looked disgusted, his tone harsh. I knew you were an idiot when you signed that contract. Who in their right mind would give up Harvard for a measly $1 million? Pay up the $10 million now, or I'll have you thrown in jail for life. At the mention of jail, fear washed over Leo's face. He got on his knees and begged the dean for a few more days. My girlfriend won a $200 million lottery. $10 million is nothing to her. I'll get it from her right away. He scrambled to find Jessica, only to find her being caught red-handed by me, trying to steal my Hermes bag. Jessica refused to admit it. This Hermes bag is mine. I used to be a rich girl. You're just a poor kid. How could you possibly afford a Hermes? The people around us started to side with Jessica. It made sense. Jessica was once a wealthy socialite and had supposedly just won $200 million. A Hermes bag seemed perfectly normal for her. Me, on the other hand, a poor student who had to work part-time jobs? An Hermes bag seemed impossible. Jessica clutched the bag tightly, her eyes filled with triumph. I had to laugh. As long as I didn't reveal I was the real lottery winner, Jessica was just going to keep up the act. I cleared my throat, ready to expose her, but I didn't see Leo rushing up from behind me. He slapped me across the face. A dull pain spread across my cheek, and I saw stars. If a classmate hadn't caught me, I would have fallen to the ground. Leo glared at me. Vivi, isn't it enough that you set me up? Now you're framing Jessica too? I'll kill you. My head was spinning, and I couldn't react. A cool liquid trickled down my lip. I touched it and saw blood. A classmate screamed. Seeing the situation escalating, someone ran to get a teacher. After hitting me, Leo immediately rushed to Jessica's side, anxiously asking if she was okay. Jessica shoved him away in disgust. Why haven't you gotten out of this school yet? Leo grabbed her hand in terror. Jessica, the dean from that college wants me to pay back $10 million or I'll go to jail. Please, you have to help me pay it. Jessica gave him a scornful look. In your dreams. Why would I give you money? Leo was stunned. I borrowed that money for you. He shouted in anger. I took the fall for you when we got expelled. I love you so much. I've done so much for you, and you won't even give me $10 million? Jessica sneered. If you weren't so useful, do you think I would have ever been with you? Take a good look at yourself. Who would want you? It was your honor to be able to sacrifice for me. As for getting anything in return, don't even think about it. Now that Leo was no longer useful, Jessica didn't need to pretend anymore. Leo was consumed by rage. You were the one who said you had $200 million. Why else would I have signed that agreement? Where's your money? Can't you just lend me $10 million? My life is about to be ruined. Leo's love for Jessica was famous throughout the school, so now, everyone sympathized with him, urging Jessica to give him the money. She looked awkward and guilty. Just then, the principal and several teachers finally arrived. The principal rushed to help me up and sternly addressed the crowd. Who said she can't afford a Hermes? Vivi donated $10 million to the school's financial aid fund. Everyone was stunned. Jessica protested. How could she possibly have $10 million? The principal scoffed, revealing the truth. Because she's the one who actually won the $200 million lottery. Unlike you, who only knows how to lie. Jessica, exposed, looked panicked and lost. Leo stared at me in shock, his face filled with regret. The principal was fed up with Jessica and her toxic influence on the school. Seizing the opportunity, he announced, "Jessica, for theft and violating school rules, you are hereby expelled." Jessica ended up with the same fate as Leo. She continued to throw a tantrum, but this time, no one paid her any attention. Leo had no time for her either. His eyes were fixed on me. In this life or death moment, I was the only one who could save him. Leo walked over to me, his steps heavy. "Vivi," he said with difficulty, "I'm sorry." I pressed an ice pack to my face and said coldly, "I don't accept your apology. You'll be paying for my medical bills, and I will be pressing charges for assault." Leo's face fell, his brow furrowed with impatience. "Don't you like me? Just pay the 10 million and I'll be with you." His "take what you can get and don't push it" attitude was so infuriating I actually laughed. And I did laugh out loud. "What do you think you are, some kind of prize?" I mocked. "You're just a guy about to go to jail. Why would I want you?" My words made him flush with shame. "Stop denying it," he said, his voice thick with pride. "You've always been in love with me." His arrogance was nauseating. So he knew. He knew I liked him all along. When he stole my lottery ticket for Jessica, when he forged a suicide note, when he stole my early admission spot for her, he knew I loved him. He used my love to build a beautiful future for his dream girl. Anyone who tramples on genuine feelings deserves to rot in hell. Any last shred of affection I had for him was gone. 10 million in damages, plus my medical bills and emotional distress compensation. Leo, get ready to spend the rest of your life in prison. Despair and terror filled Leo's eyes. He started to kneel and beg me, but it was no use. In my last life, he protected a killer. In this life, he'll rot in a cell. With Leo in jail, the only one left was Jessica. Getting expelled from school was nothing. In her past life, she killed someone. That punishment was far from enough. I had a much better punishment in mind for her. One that would make her wish she were dead. After getting the 160 million, I started learning how to invest and got into the jewelry business. Money sitting in the bank is dead. I didn't just want 160 million, I wanted more. Enough to defeat all the filthy people in the world. People like Ryan's father, the jewelry tycoon. Like father, like son. Ryan's sadistic nature was inherited from his dad. Ryan liked to torture cats, his dad liked to torture students. He would use financial aid as a pretense to get students' gratitude. Then he would abuse them mentally and physically, using words to manipulate them and whips to beat them. His aid gave students hope, but it dragged them into an even more terrifying abyss. In my past life, a friend from the financial aid group told me this truth. Not long after, she died in an accident. I was just as hopeless as them in my last life, but I was reborn. Fate gave me a second chance, and I wanted to give them one too. To give them real support, a bright future. In this new life, I wanted revenge, but I also wanted to repay the kindness I'd been shown. My fortune grew, and I gradually took over the jewelry tycoon's company. After gathering enough evidence, I sent him to prison. After the tycoon was locked up, I had Ryan, who had been released from prison, transferred to a psychiatric hospital. Then I had Jessica sent there too. A few years in jail hadn't curbed Ryan's sadistic tendencies. In fact, his methods had become even more cruel and vicious. In the psychiatric hospital, there was only Ryan and Jessica. The only person Ryan could torture was Jessica. The moment he saw her being brought in, a chilling smile spread across his face. In his eyes, Jessica was his enemy. If she hadn't tried to take my place that night, he never would have been caught and sent to jail. Every day, Jessica's screams echoed through the halls of the hospital. After Leo went to jail, his mother, Sharon, not only lost her future meal ticket, but also my mother's support. Her only house was auctioned off to pay her debts, and she was forced to work around the clock, begging my mom for forgiveness. But my mom had no time for her. She was too busy preparing gifts and warm clothes for the students I was sponsoring. Her days filled with purpose and joy. As I sponsored more and more students, I began to change more and more lives. They would affectionately call me their big sister, their eyes full of life and happiness when they looked at me. Not the dead, hollow look they had in my past life before they died one by one in accidents. It was good. I was reborn, and so were they. The end.